So I am, as she said, Vice President of American Hand Meat. American Hand Meat is a family-owned business. My dad started it about 39 years ago. He was actually the first person to go into the USDA and ask for a halal label on a product. And when he walked in and asked them, they said, "What is halal?" And they had to go find the Egyptian in the USDA, Dr. Mustafa Dadui, who explained to them what halal is. And I continue to be surprised at how many people really don't know what halal is and why we eat halal. And it's just that I get it every day at work. I get questions like yours about organic and halal. And I get questions from my former peers in the journalism industry of, so you're gonna leave all this excitement just because somebody's gotta say La ilaha illallah when they're killing an animal? And I get so, and I go off. I give them a whole conference about it. But alhamdulillah, today we have also with us Yvonne and Susan, who are also advocates of halal eating and why we eat halal as humans, not just as, of course, our first role is as worshippers of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we do it initially because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told us to. But, as is with everything with our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it's just like listening to your mom and dad. They know what's best for you, and He knows what's best for us, and so He told us how to take care of our everyday lives. So I think now I'll introduce Yvonne and Susan. Okay, so I'll just start with actually answering your question about organic and halal. So let's start with first, what is organic? Getting the organic label requires that you have lived on the land that you are raising the chickens or the beef, whatever animal. You've lived on that land for 3 generations. You could have done anything on that land as long as you have lived on that land. You know what's been in that land, you know what's gone, you know what kind of material is gone into the land. Other than that, you can give the chickens, for example, antibiotics. Okay, but you cannot feed them anything except for the organic feed. There's specified organic feed that you have to give them, but anything else is fair. You can keep them inside, you can do anything else. And then you also have to get the organic certification and label. All of this for a halal slaughterhouse, which there are 3 right now that supply this area. Hand slaughter, no machine, no stunning or anything. There's 3 now in this area. And there's grown here in this area. In 1989, there were no mosques in the Northern Virginia area, none. And today, there's over 600. So if you can imagine that type of community and how much chicken we consume on a daily basis, you have to realize the amount of chicken that comes to the market. There's no way that 3 slaughterhouses are going to be able to fulfill that. And so that you know, that 1 slaughterhouse just started a month ago. So we only had 1 slaughterhouse up until 2015 that was doing hand slaughtered, no stunning chicken. And that was up in New York. And then back in 2005, we got Exxon chicken up in Salisbury, alhamdulillah. But they're not that big. And now we have a new chicken in Vineland, New Jersey. Alhamdulillah, they're a good capacity, but still not enough. So where's all this chicken coming from? So I get a lot of people coming into my office asking me, can I get that organic chicken that, that store over there they sell? And I ask them, well, what's the brand? They tell me George's. Bro, George's is like the 3rd largest chicken supplier in America. They supply non-halal chicken. When they came to get the halal label, they merely put a tape recorder on next to their blade of somebody saying Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. That was all they did. The chicken still gets stunned. The chicken still goes through a blade. There is no difference. And in the organic, they can also get stunned. They can also go through that blade. But this is a chicken slaughterhouse. If I have to also, to get that organic label, go to those specific farmers who then have to spend all that money to raise the chicken. My chicken is going to cost, instead of the $2 that I'm charging the stores right now, I'd have to charge them $5. And then the Muslim community is not going to be able to eat chicken. So we don't go for that label. We have labels like antibiotic free. So the chickens are raised without antibiotics. And scientifically, that antibiotic free is what makes a difference in your health. Because the antibiotics are what go into your system, they go into your immunity, and they decrease your immunity and your ability to fight diseases. So you taking a chicken that is organic and has had lovely food all its life, but then has also been given antibiotics, it's not healthy. It's just a mindset. But you have to ask about, and when you're asking about organic, we hear organic and we love it, right? And really we've heard this before about American products, but we haven't really been able to apply it, I don't know, to the meats and organic. If you look at it on cereal, if you look at it on any label, right? Like, what's the difference between the organic and the non-organic?
Price.
You find the organic at Wegmans and you find the non-organic at Walmart. $5 and $2. And like you said, it's price. And we don't ask, we don't keep asking. I mean, the one rule I have when I go grocery shopping is I have to be able to read the ingredients on every label and know all the ingredients. I don't have to look it up to see what does moximaladoxifide mean. I want to give my kid that. So, but we also have Susan and Yvonne here, who have been amazing advocates for halal food and halal labeling, and really both of them have been advocates of why halal is healthier than non-halal. I'll give you guys, let you guys introduce yourselves.
Should I go?
They can hear you.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yvonne Maffei here, founder of My Halal Kitchen, the first halal cooking website. I started it in 2008 because I saw that there was a need for an education about what is halal. And I come from a background of I'm Italian, I'm Puerto Rican, and all-American, and I became Muslim in my late 20s and started eating halal in my late 20s after having traveled a lot and tasted a lot of different global foods. And when I got into the Muslim community, I realized like I was sort of in the middle between two worlds where I saw people who on one side who didn't know what halal was at all, and in the Muslim community who I thought could kind of benefit from Italian food and Latin foods, but they kind of shied away from it because of the pork and alcohol in it. And so I took a deep dive into the science of things like, alcohol and what, flavors it, what it does to flavor food and so on. And so what could I sort of substitute in dishes? And the stuff that I found and the benefit I got from people in the food science world was just amazing. And that's how I sort of really learned about the science behind halal and why it's so healthy and why it does taste so different. I'll let Sue introduce herself because I'm sure we'll dive deep into the topic, but I don't want to keep going.
Sure. I'm Susan Labadi. I've been involved with the halal industries for over 10 years. I started off as an educator and then was brought into learning about the halal industries as a writer and as a project coordinator for the American Halal Association, which does no longer exist. So I am now presently a board member with the American Halal Council, and I learned a lot from Yvonne. So over the years, we've gone on several adventures together, including Dubai. Yes. and gotten a global perspective on many things related to halal and healthy products of all kinds. Mm-hmm. So it's my pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Uh-oh, there's the echo.
I'm actually going to start out with a question because Yvonne, I was going through your book again last night. Mm-hmm. That My Halal Kitchen, which I highly recommend for anybody.
Thank you.
And there's that misconception that people have about cooking with alcohol. Mm-hmm. That you wrote about at the beginning of your book. Could you talk to us a little bit about that? Because I think it's really important for people to understand this here.
Yeah. So what I've learned, and a lot of times people might think that this is very like Muslim centric, and maybe we're saying this just out of our belief, but there's science behind this that the reason why, well, alcohol isn't allowed in food. There's lots. We can dive deeper into that in a religious sense. But for people who say that it steams off or cooks off in food, it doesn't. And that was information I got from U.S. scientists, and I put that in my book for a very good reason, because that's, scientific proof that even when you cook with alcohol and you maybe you don't see it in there, or it seems like it's not around, there's still like a 0.000 something percentage of alcohol that is left in. And for people who are really, really concerned about that, that's important to know, because you can't say that it's not in there. So, that was something I felt was important to include, because there are alternatives for that. And I'm of the belief that it's not even healthy for you. So there are like healthier alternatives to wine, to beer, to all these other alcohols that are put in desserts and dishes around the world. And I just thought, people can really enjoy classic cuisine. I'm Italian. There's wine in a lot of our foods and a lot of the desserts. But what I discovered was that halal is like so abundant. There's so much that is allowed. And a lot of times we are focused on what isn't. But the truth is that one of the reasons why halal is healthy is because the variety is allowed. There's so much of it. Yes, we have to know what isn't allowed, but when you really start to focus on abundance and what we can put in our foods, and I was of the school that, let's just match the flavor with what was in there in a non-halal way. Like red wine, I would pair with grape juice, or now I'm using molasses and things like that are all natural ingredients, super, super healthy. And I'm testing those recipes constantly to see, do the flavors, really match up with the traditional or classic dishes. So variety is the spice of life. And I think that looking at halal in a very abundant and healthy way in that sense opens up a whole new world of cooking for people. And I get messages from people who are trying not to drink alcohol, like they're part of Alcoholics Anonymous, or for recipes for children, people who are staying away from alcohol for health reasons, like they can't mix it with medications. So there's a definite opportunity here, and I like to invite everyone to halal. Like, it's not just for Muslims, it's for everyone. And knowing the background that I have, I can't sit here and just have at the table one type of person. I like all kinds of people to be able to enjoy. And I also want to enjoy global cuisine. I like so many different varieties of international foods that it really helps to understand a little bit of that science, so that we can adapt our recipes to some whatever we want to make.
I come from a family of foodies too. And I know that besides like fruit juices, you could even use vinegars, and you could play around vinegar with a little bit of sugar and things like that to get approximations. But, who said that the original traditional recipe is really the only way to go? Sometimes throwing a little fusion in there makes things more interesting. I will agree.
Yeah, I like to stick to, I thought the first book would be, something more classic, because I think what's really important to people is that they don't want to feel like they're losing their culture. And I really went through that when I first became Muslim, and I wanted to hold on to my Italian recipes, my Puerto Rican recipes, but how could I do those in a halal way? And what was really interesting is that when I started making actually some of the Puerto Rican dishes, my family was asking, like, what did you put in this, like, chicken and rice dishes or whatever? And they would say that the chicken tasted so good. They noticed the difference. And if we want to get down to the science and the health aspects of it, Sue and I, we both visited the slaughterhouses, and that's not, the best thing you want to do in a day, but it's important to know how this thing, how this works when you're in this industry. And, when I try to talk to, especially non-Muslims, then they really don't understand the sacrifice part of things. But when I sort of break it down and tell them, number one, halal means that things are very transparent. You're really going to know what's in your food. You're going to know the process. Somebody's going to be able to answer the question about where what farm this animal came from, what it was fed, and, how it was sacrificed and brought to you. They love that part. But when I explain to them, and I don't think people, it resonates sometimes, even for me, when I got into this industry, when the animal is sacrificed and the blood is drained, why is that so important? Well, chefs will tell you, hey, you know, halal is great because the meat is so tender because the blood is drained out. But if you look at it from a medical standpoint, for example, that blood is carrying so many germs in it. So if the animal is sacrificed in that way versus other ways that are really, really questionable, and that blood is like still in the body, you're going to be consuming those pathogens and germs that are in the blood. So when I just sort of break it down for people in those very simple terms, it really opens them up to, hey, this isn't just the religious aspect. They can kind of see it for what it is. Some people, this is a fact. This is a fact. It's not something we're making up, for religious reasons. So I think that's really important when talking to people about the sort of, just logistics of halal.
In addition to that, I mean, the bacteria lives in not the muscle meat, but in the blood itself. Mm-hmm. And the fact that oftentimes too, when poultry, for example, is mass produced, they are, in the interest of cost, running that line so fast that you know that when you're buying halal products, that they need to allow for that extra bit of time for that blood bacteria to be able to come out. So you will tend to find that your chicken's not as bloody. You will also think too that many times when the animals are going through their slaughter process, it has to be very frightening for them. And yet when we're working with a halal slaughter, it's incumbent on the slaughterers to make this as gentle and as easy as possible on those animals, so that you're not going to be consuming those like cortisol, the stress hormones that animal is going to be suffering in a normal processing.
Exactly.
One more thing too comes to mind is that how many times have you put chicken or something in your refrigerator, you never got around to cooking it, right? And you pull it out a few days later and you found that it's gotten smelly. When you have halal products, they seem to have a longer shelf life because they don't have that bacteria in there.
Interesting, yeah.
I'll also add to the perfection of the way our food looks is affecting us as a society. I mean, we see it with vegetables. You can get that basket of the irregular looking stuff. So it's like a tomato that looks like it has a tumor. It's just a normal tomato. It's just not what we're used to. So we're not used to, for example, seeing bruises on the chicken, when in fact those bruises indicate that the chicken was alive when it was hung and that it was fully awake. And so people look at my chicken sometimes and say, sister, what is this haram? You should see this other store that I know for a fact only buys those machine-cut stunned chickens. You see this beautiful, sister. It's white, it's clean, it doesn't have any bruises. And I'm like, well, yeah, because the thing was sleeping through the whole process. But it's also, when you leave it in the refrigerator versus my chicken, like Suzanne said, in a week, my chicken still smells fine. It's good, you can still use it. In 3 or 4 days, that chicken starts to go yellow, and you notice that the amount of water that's released from that chicken is a lot higher than the hand-cut chickens. So it's this idea, and I would include with halal eating is eating for what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala provided for us. So because we can mass produce chicken, everybody can ask for it. Because we can kill them all 1,000 an hour, we can kill them as many as we want. Let's all eat boneless breast, right? But if we couldn't do that, if we had a limited amount of food, we would eat boneless breast and legs. We figure out something for the necks. We figure out something for the hips. And do you know how I know that we do that? Because they used to do that before we mass produced chicken. They wouldn't waste anything, and they'd eat from what was around them. And so the environment, the community, the health of everything, the health of your body, the health of your environment, the health of everything continues because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created us and created the environment, created the animals, and He told us how to work together. So if you think deeply about why do we have the halal slaughter? Why do we have halal in this way? And you can start to ask questions. So when you go to the halal store, ask him, brother, this is halal? That's great. What company does it come from? And if they tell you, oh, they get certified by this, that's fine, brother. Give me the name of the certification company. and try to call the certification company. If they answer you and they tell you the way that they slaughter, then buy that chicken. But if they don't answer you, or they ignore your calls, which is what certifiers generally do when they don't want to tell you that it's stunned or that it's slaughtered this way instead of that way, but they're still labeling it as halal. So be strong. You as a Muslim community, you as a Muslim consumer, you're not just looking out for you, you're looking out for everything around you. And you have a right to ask for that, and you have a responsibility to make sure you do.
Yeah, and on that thread, Sarah, I think that's a really important thing what you just said, and also to touch upon what Susan had touched upon in terms of the animals, for it being a frightening experience for animals to be sacrificed for us. I know in some of the best places that I've been, you as consumers, we really have to pay attention to this holistic experience of halal, right? You mentioned the environment and how the animals are living, and all the way to the point that they are being sacrificed. I remember there was one slaughterhouse I went to. It was for cattle, and it had been approved by Temple Grandin. I don't know if you guys know who Temple Grandin is, but she's a huge animal rights activist, written books on, sort of this, just kind of like the animal whisperer. And she cares so much about what happens to the animals and how they feel during this process. I mean, for many other reasons, but particularly this is what I'm focusing on. I went into the slaughterhouse and you could hear a pin drop. I mean, they actually told me to be quiet, and I was talking like normally. They're like, shh. And I said, because they didn't want to stress the animals, the cows. And it was sort of a surreal experience. It was in a way, I mean, in a way it kind of felt spiritual, but I felt the weight of the occasion in the sense that these animals are being sacrificed for us. We should be using every part of them when they are sacrificed. We shouldn't waste any of it. And that is, sort of the essence of what halal really is and should be. And I think it's important for consumers to be reminded of that and to demand that from the food brands that are out there. We can be really easily distracted by the glitz and glam of new products and all these things that make our lives so much easier and more convenient. But we really have to pay attention to the animal life and treatment and ensure that we're working with and buying from brands that align with truly halal and tayyib ethics.
I'm glad you brought that up, because one thing that I want people to know, and many people don't realize, even, there are a lot of people that they're asking for, that they want halal and organic, but if they can't find that, and oftentimes you can't, they'll go for the organic rather than the halal, thinking it's better. But in truth, I know that there are a lot of chicken processors that are gassing these chickens to death. What they basically do is they find it's more economical to have these huge rooms, these gas chambers, where they lower the oxygen level and they raise up the carbon dioxide. And in a sense, the chickens are getting asphyxiated. So all at one shot. But when you open up these packages, they smell. So if you open up a package of chicken and it smells, your gut tells you this is not something, it'll dissipate, granted, but that is an indicator that that chicken was probably gassed to death, which you and I wouldn't want to be asphyxiated. So that's not really the way to go. The whole concept of halal slaughter is much more humane than being gassed out, I would say. Because obviously, if you can't breathe, you're going to go through a lot of stress and torment. And then as a consumer, you're eating that, right? So it's something that many people are not aware of. More and more of the major chicken manufacturers are going into that type of processing, and people should know. And then obviously prioritize halal. So if we're talking about halal versus the biha, Yvonne, can you elaborate for everybody on that? Because everything is halal until it's not. But Many times people get hung up on a definition, and I know you can address that best, is do it so in your books.
No, I'm so glad you brought up that example. I was actually thinking of it, but thank you so much for bringing that up, because I get this all the time, where people will say, well, I can't really find halal and organic, so I'm just going to get organic, and then they don't really realize how that animal was sacrificed and what that does to the animal, first of all, and then you're consuming. So I really do believe you are what you eat, and you are what you eat eats. Those are really concepts I live by. And when it comes to halal versus zabiha or dhabiha, lots of things are halal. Like chicken is halal. That's a perfect example, right? Someone goes to the store, it's organic, they're frustrated with halal or halal stores or whatever. They're just, they want this organic and they're focused on that. Organic is really about the feed that the animal got, number one. And two, a lot of halal producers of chicken and beef, I've talked to them about this, and they say everything is halal in the feed, but there is no but that there's not halal. When I'm saying but, I mean the feed is not organic because they can't get it. They can't get enough of it. And that's the problem. It's not that they don't want to, it's that they can't get certified feed, organic feed, but it is halal feed. It's not like they're giving the animals haram feed. And that can happen. That's what mad cow disease was all about. So you have, chicken, duck, lamb, beef, they are halal animals. But what makes them the biha is the slaughter. Mm-hmm. It's that they are properly sacrificed, but also that whole process is done right. So I want to go back to the cortisol or the stress part you mentioned, because when the animal is brought to sacrifice, one of the key aspects of the biha slaughter is that the animal, and I don't like to use the word slaughter, I want to use the word sacrifice, but you guys get what I mean, is that animal is calm when it goes to its end. And I have seen this in sort of like mass-produced situations where the ones who are doing the sacrifice take their time. Even though there's a lot of animals that are coming through, the animals are calm, and they take their time, they take their moment to say, Bismillah, Allahu Akbar. And I mean, it's such a moment. If you experience it and you see it, you have to take pause in that. But from a scientific point of view, it is de-stressing the animal, which lowers its cortisol, which means that the animal has less stress hormones in their meat, which passes on less stress hormones, if any, onto you, the consumer. So there's all this science behind it, but in reality, it becomes also so good for us. So that the biha part is really, really key to having a truly halal tayyib, product in your body.
This is something that the Muslim community has to get together and ask for and need and demand, really. Because right now, when you have Muslims that don't mind eating the halal and shika, and we don't know what it is, and we're okay with it, that makes the people who are doing the fatwas now, who are telling us what is halal and what is not halal, they are agreeing to the stunning now. So that it's become okay in our literature, in our Islamic literature, modern day literature, that stunning is allowed. And when you ask the sheikhs, and I tell them, you studied in Al-Azhar, you are a sheikh, and you are a doctor, you're a scientist, you understand the difference between the two. He tells me, well, there is, a lot of Muslims now, we got to keep up with the rate of production. And to me, that just sounds so ridiculous. Because in the Quran, in Surah Al-Ma'idah, it says that we're not allowed to eat anything that was dead before we slaughter it. We're not allowed to eat anything that was asphyxiated.
Right. Exactly.
And mukhtanaqa can only be eaten if it's caught before it dies and it's slaughtered properly. As an exception. And we've turned this exception into the rule of slaughter for our halal slaughter. And the reasoning behind our leaders and our people who are actually speaking for us is that, well, there's way too many of you. You're all asking for it. So what if we start asking for zabiha halal? I can tell you, as American halal meat, I'll take on 6, 7 more suppliers for this area alone. Alone. If we all stopped eating the machine slaughtered chicken, George's, Pilgrims, Tyson's, these are big companies. They're wonderful. They're great. They've done a lot for American economy. I'm happy for them. They stun their chickens and then they slaughter them. That's not the way that we do it. That's not halal. And if we tell everybody we don't want that, then you have Muslims that start building farms. Then you have Muslims that start making their slaughterhouses for each area. And I can tell you from my dad's experience, you can do it. And you can do it without taking loans. And you can, so you're growing in the Muslim community, but we have to understand it, and we have to educate ourselves on what exactly it is that we're eating, and we have to ask for it.
I have to make a plug for the American Halal Council here, quite honestly, because you've got some big name companies that, due to the economies of scale, they are even selling what they're labeling as halal to markets overseas, ignoring the US market, but shipping it all overseas. And in reality, even we know that this is machine slaughtered. So you really, the American consumer, have the ability to help change that. In the work that I'm doing as a board member with the American Halal Council, we want, first of all, to get funding to be able to do a consumer market study that lets people know about the American Muslim consumer market. And we also want to be able to get some more legislation that helps people know what exactly are the parameters for their food being labeled halal, because sometimes there's fraud involved with that, and most people don't know, or they don't seem to care, but we need to care. It's our responsibility. And lastly, I feel that if we are able to, as a community, get the producers to be more accountable, we can have what we really consider to be halal. And what I mean by that is that although most everything is halal, but our concept now of halal really entails what I think, particularly the younger generation is finding, that they really want to be able to find products that are going to be GMO-free, organic, vegan, humanely raised, cruelty-free, fair trade, Rainforest Alliance certified. These are the types of things that we really want. There are costs involved with getting these certifications, but if we could at least get a decent halal bill passed that identifies what is truly halal in our estimate and be able to enforce that, we would be the best of products. We would be the healthiest of products.
Yeah, where halal and tayyib, mean the same thing, basically.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's coming. The next generation coming up has different standards, and they're great. They're fantastic. They want, ethical companies and brands that align with their social values, and that has to do with everything you mentioned, Sue.
It's the ideal, but I think that it's like shooting for the moon, but I think we can do it.
I think of all labels out there in the food industry, we are the ones most set up to do it, and I think we have a moral imperative to do it. I think we really need to hold that standard to ourselves, and our bodies are amanas on us, right? I mean, so whatever we put into it, we are going to be asked about. And I think,
you could pay the halal food bill now, or you could pay the doctor later, perhaps, is the way to think about it. Same with organic. When we wanted to start purchasing organic and we thought, we can't afford this, the family, literally I made the dua, just please, make it possible that we can to do the right thing, and that we have enough that we're able to afford, even when you've got better nutrition, when you've got really, I'd say just, maybe even less food, but high quality food, your body knows that it's satisfied. And then you've got actually, more vegetables, things that you can add in to fill yourself and get even better nutrition and bottom line.
Well, now that, I was even watching, programs about, people who live longest around the world, and they were saying that, go for nutrient dense and calorie poor food. And, that is basically non-GMO, organic, leafy, lots of vegetables, leafy greens, we don't have to complicate things that much. I think we just need to get the junk out of everything. And we need to demand that from, I really cringe sometimes when I see a halal label on something and it's full of things I can't pronounce, things that are in a lab. And I think, I can understand parents and moms who are at the grocery store and you find something that's like the kids actually want, and you're like, oh, it's okay, it's halal, but then there's all this stuff in it. How do you justify that to your kids, right? We have to do better. We have to make, we have to just make better choices and put people over profits.
Absolutely. It'll come back to you too. Case in point, yesterday I was walking with my son and we were talking about the bread that I bought. It was a gluten-free bread, but he said, Mom, have you looked at the labels on that and seen that? I think there's a lot of sawdust in it and a lot of other things. I like another brand that we were eating that also was gluten-free, but it was real food, and exactly. I not even really paid attention. I saw the product, I grabbed it off the shelf, just like oftentimes we do.
Right.
This morning I'm looking at it. He was absolutely right. So even when we're communicating that to other people in our family, if you don't catch something, if you've done your job, they will catch it back on you. At least, that way they are made aware, and hopefully they will all read the labels and make better choices for us.
Well, that's why I tend to sometimes get so frustrated with the complexity of the food products that I try to throw things down sometimes and say, you know what? I tell my audience all the time, like, let's just simplify everything and, grow what we can, even if it's a few herbs on the windowsill, cook at home, cook with your family. When you do those things, what's going into your food. Lots of people are now vegan halal and vegetarian halal. I don't ascribe to those, but I understand it, So I think it's like less is more sometimes, right? So maybe in our food products, we have to really encourage producers to just edit it down and make it simple. Go back to real food.
Agreed. If the consumers would buy the sour cream that basically says sour cream, cultured cream, simple label is going to get you where you want to go. This is going to be unpopular, I'm sure, but I want to bring up the nose to tail concept. Because we talk about the blue zones and things like that, where people have very high longevity.
Yeah,
it's something that we're eating so much chicken breast, but what about the rest? And not just
the organ meats.
Yes. Yeah. When I see you, I think we got to do organ meats. I need to find a better recipe for liver, Yvonne. Okay.
Yeah, when you come, I've got the kidney and liver in my freezer.
This is something that actually makes my life very, very, very difficult. You have no idea how many orders for boneless breast I get. But let's get questions from the audience.
Yeah, since slaughtering seems to be an issue, a continuing issue, what do you think about emerging technology that would eliminate slaughtering altogether? Taking embryo on the chicken cells, cow cells, and have it grown, the meat grown artificially. Totally eliminates any animal suffering.
Yeah, I know that we're talking about like lab grown meat and things like that. Is that what we're addressing here?
Yeah, I think so.
I'll go back to, this is my opinion. All right. I'm not representing anybody. I'm an independent here, but I've looked at the labels of some of those other products and they have a lot of other things in them. Enough said. That's my take.
Yeah. I'm not for animal suffering at all. But I don't think this is the alternative. I just think it's a lot of fake food and I'm not for that.
Be put out of business, so no. And my husband buys buys this Beyond Burger and the stuff that was grown in the Petri dish. I would say that it does bear the question that if we all do that, what happens to all the chickens in the world? What happens to all the beef? What happens? So I think that is that not?
I worry about the long-term health effects. We don't know.
I think the greed has to, go away. I think that it's like, I know people who become vegetarians or vegan because of the inhumane practices in the animal industry, in animal industry, and I think that it's noble to address it and to do something about it, but it doesn't solve the problem. We have to change the industry, the way that the animals are being treated and sacrificed. That's not solving the root issue.
There's a lot of responses.
Open the can of worms.
We opened a can of worms.
I wanted to speak to that question that Peter had. There's actually a text in the Quran, or in the Hadith, in the Sunnah, where there was a tribe that would cut off the buttocks of the sheep whilst it was alive, and they would take that meat and they would eat it. So he was asked about this question. They asked the question, is it halal? Is it permissible? And the answer was no. فَهُوَ مَيْتَةٌ. This is maytah, it's dead meat. So anything that is taken from an animal whilst it is living, and it has not been slaughtered properly, it is not going through the proper process, it is not considered as acceptable, and it is not considered as halal. Now the question may come if the animal is already slaughtered and we take those proteins and then we grow it in the lab. Then from something which is halal, something halal can come, right? But if something is najas, is filthy, is already dirty, you cannot build upon something that is dirty and filthy that which is clean. And this also speaks to some other questions about alcohol as well. Now, I also wanted to speak on something which I know may not be popular, especially in the discussion as I was hearing, but we have to be careful about, what is halal, what is not halal, because there are clear hadith. The Prophet ﷺ, he said, anything that causes the blood to flow, you may kill the animal, as the Sahabiya asked. I have only a reed, I have a stick, I have a stone, I have a narad, which is like a staff. And they kept coming to the Prophet ﷺ with different tools, different methods of slaughter. And he said, anything that causes the blood to flow, فَهُوَ halal. It is halal, it is permissible. So I think we just need to be careful about that. There are differences of opinion. There are fatwa that are based upon actual text, not necessarily just based upon the exception to the rule. Like there are many Muslims today, and they were not at the time of Rasulullah. I just wanted to add that in there, just for the sake of responsibility.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to clarify something. We sell only halal meat at American Meat, but we sell machine slaughtered Georges. We sell machine slaughtered Pilgrims. We have it clearly labeled, and when somebody buys it from me, I explain to them exactly how each chicken is raised, slaughtered, and packaged. So and my personal opinion, and I don't eat anything that's machine slaughtered. I personally only eat the stuff that's hand slaughtered, and I personally believe that is the way that we should go. But I do understand and agree with the brother that the labeling and knowing and understanding what we're getting is the key. The key to getting to the truth and the right thing and in the way that the industry should go.
Yeah, I agree with that. Just like in Whole Foods, they've got the different categories. That's, I think, what we're looking for in our future is a tiered system of halal certification so that people can pick and choose, but at least they should be informed and there be transparency in what they're purchasing.
Assalamu alaikum. I'm definitely going to support your business. And the reason why I would ask a question, I wanted information regarding your business Because like once again, I'm like new to the area. I'm maybe like 2 years, so definitely want to get some questions answered. Okay. Do you have a farm locally?
No, so we are a wholesaler.
Okay.
We work with several distributors from New York down to, and actually one of them in Florida, but
Okay.
we purchase lamb, goat, beef, and chicken from distributors that we personally vet. I mean, I don't just take a certification. I actually have to call the slaughterhouse. They have to give me the slaughter method in order for me to let the slaughter pass through my warehouse. So, sorry, just for you, I mean, anybody who walks through my door that wants halal meat, I can't say no. But what I would say, I'm most valuable to you, if you call me and let me know I'm in this area, I will tell you which stores I know where I work with that buy the brands of halal that I do. And the reason why we're able to do it is because my father, like I said, started it 39 years ago. He was a international inspector for halal meat in Egypt. So all the halal meat that was coming into Egypt had to come through him first. And he saw firsthand in Argentina and Uruguay and all of these places, the slaughterhouse is slaughtering with stunning. And then when they find out that the requirement is no stunning, they're able to change. And they're able to go to hand slaughter without all of that. But that's why we're very hand slaughter centric. But yeah, you can give us a call, I'll give you the business information and we'll have you help.
Earlier you brought up that there's only 3 slaughterhouses in this DMV area.
3 chicken slaughterhouses that provide hand slaughtered non-stunned chicken. Yes, Stand Chicken, Murray's Slaughterhouse that provides the Anne Murray's chicken, and now a new chicken called Vineyard Poultry.
Okay. There's
I want to take the mic up here, that mic ran out, the batteries in the kitchen. So please take them for you.
Okay. Anyone have questions?
Yeah, you can repeat it.
Okay. So,
No, he's got a question.
No, go ahead, you're good.
That's not working.
It's dead.
I can repeat it, but go ahead.
The mic will
Okay.
pick
Are
up.
there any scientific studies that demonstrate the statistical difference between certain stunning methods versus, not stunning them at all and doing it, and demonstrating that the cortisol or the stress hormones are statistically different? Because it seems to me any form of slaughtering is going to set off the animal even if it's not stunned at all.
No, I don't know of any. I don't know any of that. That kind of research just is.
I believe there is. There is.
There is.
Yeah, out of Malaysia, I know they've done those at least.
And Cornell University. I'm looking for them right now to see if I can show you, because they did a study on halal and kosher similarly, and let me look for it and see if I can post a
That
link.
study specifically the stress hormone levels
But it's
or the stress levels in the animal.
Yeah, I'm looking for it right now.
I know they've also had other studies where they talk about different levels of electricity used in the stunning. Here in the States, the stun level is less versus overseas. We usually use a very strong stun that can oftentimes kill.
But the less the stun, the easier the blood flow, right? The more the blood flow. But what I'm wondering about is the stress hormones issue, which I think is also important, that no matter how they're slaughtered, I think their cortisone levels would shoot up almost instantaneously when they're going through the slaughter process.
I think you see like how Temple Grandin does her slaughterhouses. Because she's autistic, and so the way that she calmed down as a child was that somebody would come up and hug her tightly. It was hard to get somebody to be able to do that, so they would have a machine that she could go into, and it would give her pressure points on the parts that would calm her down. So when she started working at a slaughterhouse, she considered doing that, and they would pass in the slaughterhouse. They pass through kind of like a S-shaped tube, the cattle, so they don't see what's happening in front of them. They don't know what they're going into. It's really quiet. When they get to the slaughter point, they're squeezed in a certain way so that they calm down. And then if you use, I mean, if you've ever gone in the office, you got a paper cut. Haven't you ever had a paper cut that you didn't realize was there until the blood was all over the desk and you're like, ooh, what happened? But have you ever stuck your finger in a socket and not realized that you just got electrocuted? No. And that's the thing, that if it's the way that Temple Grandin is doing it, and the way I've seen some of the chicken slaughterhouses do it, where the animal doesn't really realize what's going on, and the cut is fast enough and clean enough, those stress levels are not there. That not the stress levels that we're seeing in these mass slaughterhouses where it's like everything comes in front of everything else.
Well, the scientific studies would be very important.
Yes.
To
I posted
justify
one.
having the requirement against stunning or electrical stunning, gas stunning, etc.
There was a study that came out of Italy in 2018. I just posted a link in the chat box. So if anybody wants to look that up, I believe they can download it.
You're gonna want to put it in the stage, not the backstage.
I did.
Oh, okay, just making sure.
MDPI.
Yep, in the stage.
That's just one of many, but that's the one I found most recently.
Do you want to share that?
Yeah, I think that, I mean, we could go on and on about this. Yvonne, Susan, and I have been talking about this
I would
for years
encourage
now.
There's some amazing academics that are coming out of Cornell University, studying kosher and halal. They really know their stuff, and if anybody's really interested to attend food science conferences, they are just a plethora of information about these kinds of things. Ifanka, Islamic Food and Nutrition Council of America, they put those conferences out, and I have learned so much from them on these kinds of topics.
So,
Thank you.
So I think the conclusion we have is find out more about your food and learn more even from the educational resources that Yvonne has given us today. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much for having us.
So thank you very much, ladies. Thank you, Sarah Wali, for moderating this wonderful panel, and just makes you want to go out and eat halal food. So that's what we're going to do. This was our last panel. Thank you to all of you who stuck around for the duration. And Marwan, do you have any closing remarks you'd like to share with people? This is a challenge.
Okay, so again, thank you, everybody. I know probably have more people watching us virtually, and even more people will be watching the recorded version of this because we will be publishing it soon, inshallah. So thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Elizabeth, again. Thank you for those who stuck around. And inshallah, we'll see you again soon. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam.